to speak on the observance of the 150th year since the Flying Foam Massacre. I forewarn that the information statement is confronting. I also advise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that, with the permission of the Yaburara people, that this statement includes the names of individuals who have died. Over a number of years, myself and Tom Garra, a historian, have been researching what had happened, and at last we have quite a clear picture through reference to the Batty Library and others. I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal countries of the Ngarluma and Yaburara people as the past, present and future custodians of the lands and the waters of Murujuga, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. The region of Murujuga, also known as the Burrup Peninsula and the islands of the Dampier Archipelago, has been the home of the Ngarluma and the Yaburara peoples for tens of thousands of years. The Yaburara people, known for their resourcefulness, were quite often referred to as the downstream people, and had a close association, particularly with the sea, after it emerged in the region some 10,000 years ago. Obviously, this is depicted in the motifs that abound on the Burrup Peninsula, which were carved by the Yaburara people. It is not exactly known where the Yaburara lands ended and the Ngarluma lands began, because unfortunately we have no historic records of that. The Yaburara people have been, to the best of my knowledge, totally erased, and the studies that we've carried out indicate that none survived Rottnest. Murujuga was colonised in 1863 with the advent of the nearby towns of Cossack and Roban. What followed was an incessant abuse of the First Nations people. In 1866, largely decimated by a smallpox epidemic which went quite through the regions. While relations were initially non-violent and there was quite clearly evidence of good relations, the 1865 discovery of pearl shell at Nickel Bay led to the colonisers exploiting Yaburara people alongside other Aboriginal groups along the Pilbara coast. Derived of water and resources, the locals, the Indigenous locals, resorted to stealing from colonisers to survive. Aboriginal people were abducted as slave pearl divers and sexually abused by white pearlers, and in some cases placed on islands as brothels. Others were stolen from outside the country and in many cases were forced to march long distances along the coast to act as pearl divers. In 1868, the Yaburara people were effectively destroyed by a society in a genocidal Flying Foam Massacre. The massacre occurred over a number of months, perpetrated by colonists of the Murujuga area in the Flying Foam Passage and King Bay. With the colourable approval, and this is a quote of the responsible government official of the district, recalls one individual who was present. One observation from Henry Reynolds' book, The Other Side of the Frontier, states the objective was simple: the use of overwhelming force to crush resistance once and for all. On the 6th of February, an Aboriginal man named Coolyaberry was arrested by Police Constable Griffiths and chained by the neck to a tree for stealing flour from a pearling vessel. On the 7th of February, a group of relatives speared to death Griffiths, his assistant, an Aboriginal man called Peter, and a pearler called Bream, who was camping nearby. And afterwards they freed Coolyaberry. A number of Aboriginal locals who were uninvolved in the incidents reported the names of the attackers to the government resident at Roban, Robert John Scholl. When Scholl returned to Roban, he assembled two parties of special constables who were tasked with finding and arresting all involved. Constable Alex McRae and Constable John Withnell took two parties, 10 each, one to Hearson's Cove and one to the Flying Foam Passage. Over the next few days, the parties searched the islands of the passage and fired on any Aboriginal people they saw. And it is noted that without handcuffs or other methods of restraint, they either lacked the foresight or the intention to make arrests in the first place. In the official report written soon afterwards, McRae described the Yabarara as misguided creatures. Robert Scholl himself wrote the following disturbing remarks in the report to the Colonial Secretary. I have no hesitation in saying that, in brackets, loss of life amongst the isolated whites has been prevented, and the well-disposed natives confirmed in their amity towards us, the wavering made steadfast, the guilty terrified, and the old feeling of security revived amongst the whole of the white population. In the next few months, many Aboriginal people were arrested and killed. In March, 2 men named Pakapakurga and Wollongari, an innocent Aboriginal man, were shot dead while trying to escape a constable. At least 8 more men were arrested in May. Of these men, Mulungoff, Kurakura, Uyurumburi was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment on Rottnest Island after a trial at the Perth Supreme Court. 3 other men, Warra, Nemery and Bowra, were tried in the Roban Court, where Bowra and Warra were sentenced to 3 years imprisonment on Rottnest. Coolyaberry was shot dead in July. Only Mulungo and Uyurumburi made it out of Rottnest Island alive, and it is not known whether they ever got back to country. Both were released on the 30th of August 1877. Some records suggest that 60 Yabarara people were killed and others suspect 150 is more accurate. Official reports by McRae and Withnell state that at most 5 to 10 Yabarara people were killed. David Carley, a coloniser in Roban, wrote about the massacre. It is well known by old hands that in one day there were quite 60 natives, men, women and children, shot dead. The natives have shown me skulls of 15 who were shot dead. 3 of the skulls were those of children, and 2 of these had bullet holes in them. Even in a small way, the memory of the massacre is apparent. Aboriginal communities in the northwest today are reminded of the malicious individual in the name of Roban Shoal Street. In Perth, Shoal is commemorated in a plaque on St George's Terrace. This is akin to having the names of other Australian tyrants plastered on paths and maps, i.e. Martin Bryant Terrace. To achieve justice, reconciliation and reparation for Aboriginal Australians today, we need to acknowledge the darkest facets of our history and understand that we are not a post-colonial state. The effects of our ancestors' many evil doings are felt just as vividly today by Aboriginal Australians as they were 150 years ago. We need to support our First Nations people, we need to honour the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and we must change the date of Australia Day. And we must formally conclude treaties. We need to achieve all of the 7 goals of the Closing the Gap campaign, not only the 3 which are on track after 10 years. Our progress in this space has been described as woefully inadequate by the United Nations. We must do better. I will be attending the City of Karatha's memorial of the Flying Foam Massacre this weekend on the 15th, and I will do it with pride.